The members of society should be outraged that someone in state's custody was killed.
The family of Milo Warnock wants answers after he was beaten to death by another inmate at an Idaho prison in December. Idaho State Police is investigating Warnock's death. An ISP spokesman told 7 Investigates earlier this month their investigation was wrapping up and would be forwarded to the Ada County Prosecutor's Office shortly for review. ISP has not returned our calls and emails this week asking about the status of that investigation, and the Prosecutor's Office says it still hasn't received reports from ISP. As Warnock's family awaits information, they not only blame the man who took his life, but the systems that led to his death.
Milo was a complicated person, but he was highly intelligent. He was known to be a hard worker. He was a kind, compassionate, sensitive person. But Milo struggled with mental illness for most of his adult life. And that's kind of the crux of the story.
A story.
It's left a hole.
Hallie Johnson never expected to end so horrifically.
There's not a day that we don't talk about Milo and what has happened. He isn't as much in our lives now as he was when he was alive.
The Idaho Department of Corrections says an inmate beat her brother Milo Warnock to death at the Idaho State Correctional Center on December 10th.
He had fractures all over his skull, in the front, in the back, all over. Milo had no defensive wounds on him.
Johnson says it happened in his cell, where he lived with one other man.
It's a dangerous environment.
Milo was sentenced to serve at least 2 years at ISCC in the summer of 2023 after getting his 4th DUI and missing mental health court. Once in prison, Milo was given meds for anxiety and bipolar disorder in the evenings instead of the mornings, which kept him up at night. To change that, prison records show he submitted a paper form in a Dropbox and cheeked his medication in the meantime, storing it away.
He later learned that at the facility where F Block is, they were no longer using the hard copy forms or the Dropbox. They had announced the month previous that you could only make such a request through their online system. You would know that if you had requested a hard copy of the rules and regulations for that facility. You would know that you needed to request that document if you had access to those documents. So in that way, it was a bit like he was set up to fail.
Milo got caught cheeking his meds, and because possessing drugs or alcohol in the prison is against the rules, correctional officers gave him a disciplinary offense and sent him to high-security close custody. There, he spent almost 23 hours a day with his cellmate. An IDOC public information officer explained close custody typically houses inmates who've escaped, have serious disciplinary history, or did something dangerous in prison. In messages to family, Milo complained about his cellmate, saying the man got into fights with other inmates, was an addict, and had mental illness.
I see both individuals, Milo's cellmate and Milo, as people who needed help. It was a dangerous situation to put 2 people with mental health needs in a cell together for 23 hours a day.
Idaho State Police hasn't publicly said if his cellmate killed him, and the Ada County Prosecutor's Office hasn't filed charges.
Inmates and MACs do not have access to education, mentorship, or chapel. And so you take the most troubled people of society and you strip away anything that might make them better. I'm upset that he was in the state's care at the prison, where I should have felt like, yeah, this is it's not a resort, it's not a great place to be. But I, as a sister, should be like, he's gonna come out, and when he comes out, we are gonna rally behind him and get him set back up on his feet.
In the wake of Milo's death, the second beating death at an IDOC facility last year, the Warnocks are not only seeking answers, they're calling for changes to Idaho's prison system.
I don't know if these men needed to be housed in single-cell situations. I know that there's overcrowding at the prison. I think there should be a distinction between offenders who have been violent either as the crime that got them to prison or if there's a history of violence within the prison walls.
The family would like to see resources like education for people in close custody, more subjectivity with inmates' violations, and deeper consideration for who inmates are housed with.
It's such an odd thing to have stronger feelings about the system that got my brother there than I have about the person who killed him.
But they say the story doesn't end with IDOC.
What does justice and accountability look like for you and your family after Milo's death?
I would like to know that our judges act with a bit more compassion and mercy. Perhaps we need to invest in training about mental illness and what it means and how to better address those issues. I don't know that there really is justice for Milo. There's not going to be anything that makes me feel better. But if there's some change that comes about so that there's not another Milo, that could be enough.
Morgan Romero, Idaho's News Channel 7.
Back in December, IDOC said they moved the suspect to administrative segregation, but they wouldn't say who that suspect was. In a statement they sent us last week, the department said, quote, "We appreciate that Mr. Warnock's family wants answers, and so do we. It would be inappropriate for us to comment before the facts are fully investigated and made known." They went on to say the investigation is essential to bring Mr. Warnock's killer to justice.